the state and our nation's capital. This is WXII 12 Commitment 2024 General Election Coverage.
Good morning here at 9 o'clock and welcome to our special election edition of The Local Vibe. I'm Audrey Bisk.
And I'm Adriana Hargrove. Donald Trump is officially headed back to the White House.
3.5 hours ago, roughly, he captured 277 electoral votes, 7 more than he needed to regain power.
Our Jackie Pascal has more.
I'm here with High Point University political science professor Martin Kifer. Martin, so let's talk about this presidential race. Officially, Donald Trump is the president-elect. How did we get to this point this morning?
Well, we've been watching it for a while here. Over the hours, we saw Donald Trump pick up states that he had before, like North Carolina, but then also flip states that Joe Biden had won in 2020, like Georgia and then Pennsylvania and finally Wisconsin. So where we are right now, we are at projecting 277 electoral votes. The president-elect could get more between now and when the votes are finally counted, but that's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. And when Donald Trump does eventually go into office in several months from now, we saw a lot of challenges in his campaign between assassination attempts and different lawsuits going on. What kind of challenges do you think he will face when he gets to D.C.?
Well, one of the things that the president-elect is going to be thinking about is pretty much exactly what he had to deal with the last time he entered office, and that is the institutional arrangement there in Washington, D.C. Most presidents recently have gone into office with control of the House and the Senate by their party, and this shouldn't be any different. What we'll see over the next couple of years is a president who's trying to set out goals and achieve them with allies within the legislature, and we're going to be observing that to see to what extent he's able to achieve those goals.
You mentioned when we started this morning when that race was called, it really comes down to those swing states where they've been putting a lot of time, effort, money, including North Carolina. What role did we play in this election?
Well, we ended up playing a rather pivotal role because we were the first sign, that things were going in the president-elect's favor rather than Vice President Harris. And although Republicans have had a good deal of fortune here in North Carolina in terms of the presidential level, it did give a hint that instead of some surprises tonight in terms of Kamala Harris picking up states, it was going in a different direction.
Let's talk about Harris. We did not end up hearing from her at what was supposed to be her watch party last night at her alma mater. Expected to speak today. What do you think she'll be talking about with her supporters?
Yeah, one of the things I guess we can expect in terms of a concession speech is to talk with those supporters and thank them for the energy they put into the campaign. If nothing else, this campaign was characterized by a lot of energy on both sides, and that intensity is something that volunteers deserve credit for. I think that the vice president will do that, and then we'll see from there to the extent which she has a conciliatory tone, looking forward to trying to unify the country. There may be some defiance, but we're looking to see exactly what her tone is going to be like.
Yeah, especially after a very contentious race.
For sure.
Thank you. Martin, political science professor from High Point University.
The Associated Press is projecting Mo Green the winner for Superintendent of Public Instruction.
He has received 51% of the vote compared to the Republican challenger, Michelle Moreau, with 49% now at this hour.
Our Aaron Burnett is live in Greensboro. Aaron, Moreau's campaign has made a statement.
Yeah, that's right. As people woken up to the news this morning, we have a lot of reaction trickling in from the Moreau campaign as well. That statement reads in part, "I intend to honor the millions of concerned North Carolinians who supported my race by continuing to fight for our children. The election for superintendent may be over, but the need for safe schools and education excellence remains." We also have reaction from Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Superintendent Tricia McManus. Her statement reads in part, "Mo Green had a great record as superintendent in Guilford County. He is a champion for all students and for public education. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish in the next 4 years." And no word yet from Mo Green's campaign, but we're working on that as well. From Greensboro, I'm Aaron Burnett, WXII 12 News.
All right, Aaron, thank you. Now, North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein has been elected the state's next governor. Projected results show the Democrat defeated Republican Lieutenant Mark Robinson.
Our Chris Peterson attended Stein's watch party last night and has a recap from Raleigh.
In his acceptance speech, Governor-elect Josh Stein said the people of North Carolina chose hope over hate, and he shared his vision for the state of North Carolina. The atmosphere in the room Tuesday night was like a high school football pep rally. There was cheering, hugs. They even had the Shaw University Marching Band warm up the crowd. In his speech, Josh Stein said he's honored to be the next governor, and the best part of North Carolina is the people. He never mentioned his opponent, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, by name, but shared that the people of North Carolina chose decency over division, a reference to what Stein calls Robinson's extreme statements and hate speech. Stein sent a clear message to the Republican majority in the General Assembly that we need to work together to ensure a bright future for our state.
To build this brighter future, we must put aside our differences and work together. We must reject the politics of division, fear, and hate that keep us from finding common ground. We will go further when we go together, not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as independents, but as North Carolinians.
Democratic leaders I spoke with say the #1 issue facing Josh Stein as he takes office is helping the people of Western North Carolina recover from Hurricane Helene. In Raleigh, I'm Chris Peterson, WXII 12 News.
Stein's opponent, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, acknowledged the narrowing opportunity to win the governor's race. During his concession speech, Robinson spoke about his background and his intention to fight for North Carolinians. He also thanked supporters that have been with him since 2020 and the impact they've had on his life.
Now I'm proud to stand in front of so many supporters and have so many votes cast for me by people who have confidence in me. It's not about the lies. It's not about the half-truths. It's about the people who believe in you. And it's about the state that you love, a state that I fully intend to continue to serve for the next 2 months. And who knows, maybe in the future once again, somewhere in office. Who knows? I don't know. But we're going to take our time.
Robinson did not directly address Stein during his speech, but did mention the, quote, millions and millions used in attacks against him. The lieutenant governor says he's going to focus on his work in this role for the remainder of his tenure, and after that, his focus will be on his family.
The race for North Carolina Attorney General drew significant attention. Democrat Jeff Jackson is the projected winner. Unofficial results show Jackson defeated Republican Dan Bishop with 51% of the vote. Our Kara Peters has more from Jackson's watch party in Raleigh.
Jeff Jackson was joined by his family when he gave his victory speech around midnight Tuesday night. He started off by saying, while it was a close race, we won. Jeff Jackson is a lawyer and has experience in both the North Carolina legislature and Congress. During his speech, he thanked his family and his small but mighty campaign team for their sacrifices and countless time spent dedicated to his campaign. He says he looks forward to joining the public servants over at the North Carolina Department of Justice. He wrapped up his speech outlining key traits he believes puts him in place to hold the title as Attorney General.
What most people are looking for in elected officials is a simple set of values: honesty, decency, integrity, being a basically reasonable person who actually cares about other people. I firmly believe that's the way forward. It isn't a slogan, it isn't a faction, it isn't outrage. It's simple, straightforward public service. That's how I plan to do this job, and I can't tell you how excited I am to get started. Thank you.
Jeff Jackson also thanked current Attorney General and Governor-elect Josh Stein for his work, thanking him for keeping opioid manufacturers accountable as well as keeping people safe. As a reminder, some of Jeff Jackson's key priorities include tackling the fentanyl epidemic as well as increasing security for AI scammers. Jeff Jackson now joins a long lineage of Democratic AGs here in North Carolina. We have not seen a Republican AG in more than 120 years. In Raleigh, I'm Kara Peters for WXII 12 News.
Now in Buncombe County, precincts saw high voter turnout for the general election.
Nearly 160,000 people voted, with 32,000 of those voting in person yesterday. Buncombe County was one of the hardest hit areas from Helene in our state. Many voters are still grieving what they lost, but they say they managed to keep the election top of mind the last few weeks. That includes a 63-year-old first-time voter we spoke with, who said although she's never voted before, she understands the importance of making her vote count. We apologize, we did not have the sound from that woman. We'll move on now to a 103-year-old woman from Florida who once again completed her civic duty at the polls. Edna Mae Robinson is her name. She voted in the landmark presidential election yesterday. You can see that woman being escorted into the building. She was eager, where she's proudly exercising her right to vote. She's no stranger to politics. She campaigned for Shirley Chisholm in 1972, who was the first African-American woman to vie for the Democratic presidential nomination.
Now we do have to take a quick break, but here is a look at some of the projected winners from several races in the Piedmont Triad.